I've just just used it and it's fine.
There we go. So that is us live once again on another Blether tonight. So thank you very much for those who are joining us. It seems to be the YouTubers who are hitting us first. We've got Ian and Dixon. Good evening, guys. Let us know what's in your glass. Dave, I'd be really interested to know what wine or Prosecco or pink stuff you're drinking tonight. Hopefully we get some whiskey. Maybe no whiskey left. Yeah. Still a couple of days on that auction as well. So if you are looking for some bargains, head to I think it's Whisky Hammery. So have a look on that. We have got. Well, no. It's that time of year though. It's a strange one. Great for buyers at the moment, I think.
Yeah.
So it seems to be a trend around about September, school kids' holidays and all that kind of stuff.
I guess people spend all their money on new uniforms and things. Yeah,
I know.
School bags, pencils.
Kids go to school without shoes. Just get a bottle of whiskey in you.
That's right. Send the kids in stocking soles. Absolutely.
Exactly. Oh, we have got the Water of Life whiskey film joining us on YouTube tonight as well. Good evening. I'm assuming, Greg, it's yourself. He's on the sparkling water. What time is it, Greg? It must be maybe a wee bit too early for.
Maybe 7 hours it'll be, so just about 11 o'clock, maybe. It's not too early.
Depends what you do. Yeah, 11 a.m.
Yeah, there you go. That's an hour past opening time, Greg. Come on, get on it.
That's what your master distillers and blenders always say is the prime time between 10 and 11, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. You've got no excuse. So Dave's on the whiskey. He's got a tomato in his glass and a bottle of Peroni. Would be who else we've got? We've got Phil. Good evening, Phil. Good evening, Fraser. Great to have you on. Oh, so Dave's his lot has passed. So it was Dave finishing Sunday. So
361 minutes.
That's all right. Just about one for every day of the year there, Dave. Plenty means you got plenty of room for starting a new collection.
Oh, that's right, absolutely. We'll see you in the shop tomorrow.
So we're getting on a bit. We're into our third minute and we haven't introduced our guests yet. So quick one, Russell, what's in your glass tonight?
I have got a Glen Scotia Victoriana, one of my favourite from the group, and a clue to who we've got on tonight. Yeah. So yeah, I thought I'd have one of those. Haven't had one for a wee while. It was my Christmas draw a couple of years ago as well. So
yeah, I mean, the Victoriana is a stunner. It's a really, really good range.
Yep.
Reasonably priced, and it's got that real Campbelltown kind of funk as well, doesn't it?
Yep.
Well, I'm for myself something a wee bit different and off-brand tonight. I've gone for the Concept 8-year-old of the Dalhuin.
Oh, the Dalhuin, okay. So I've only had the Kahlua. Kahlua is a good dram from that range, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've yet to have a bad Dalhuin, to be honest. There's some absolute belters out there. Glen Scotia here as well, which I'll crack into later. It is 57.5%, so probably not one to have throughout the full blether. I'll crack that.
I'm just going to stay to 54.2, but I do have a bottle of water here too.
So, we've got Matthew Runcie on. Good evening, Matthew. Nice to have you on. We're doing well. Hope you are as well. Guys, you know what's in our glass. Let us know in the comments what's in your glass as we let our guest into the screen. Here we go.
Here he goes.
Evening, gentlemen. Evening, everyone.
Good evening, Gary. How are you?
I'm good, gents. I'm good. How are you?
How are you doing? Well?
Yeah, very well, actually. Yeah.
Super. Thank you very much for having me on.
No, thanks for coming on. It's
trying to get you on for a wee while. So we've been chasing other people in the group. We've had Ian on a couple of times, and we've had Michael on as well.
Michael,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you peaked pretty early there. Do you mean it's pretty much downhill from there?
Absolutely not.
Shoes for me to do.
Sorry?
Said that's big shoes for me to fill. That's a tough gig to follow.
Not at all. Not at all.
An awful lot. I'm going to jump back onto another laptop and see if that helps. So, Russell, can you take it for
absolutely?
And I'll come back and see.
Get 50p in the meter.
50p in the meter. That's right. So I'm laughing because this time last week I had an absolute nightmare with my computer. We Dean Jode from Murray McDavid, and I was watching Mike and Dean on my telephone while I was trying to get my computer to work, and I literally was inches away from throwing it the length of the main street. The camera wouldn't work, and oh my god, yeah.
It's the kind of stuff you rewind 3 years ago. We would have never thought that these would be the big problems we would be complaining about.
I know.
But this, to be fair, I love the kind of the virtual element that it's one of the positive things that's come out of COVID for me is that it's allowed, whilst we can't do the travel, it has allowed me to do more regular tastings with groups from across the world. Australia, Taiwan, France. It means you're not having to go a 3-hour flight and a 2-day stay for a 1.5 hour tasting kind of thing.
Absolutely. But from our point of view, it's given greater access to you guys and the Ians and the Michaels and people like that we probably wouldn't ordinarily get access to unless we actually went to a festival, and even then, the likelihood of maybe bumping into Billy Walker and all these kind of people. So it's been a great opportunity to just get in touch with a lot of people. I think, and really enjoyed it. Yeah, so you were telling us what's in your glass then. What have you got tonight, Gary?
So I've got the Loch Lomond single grain, the unpeated single grain. It's one of my favourite whiskies to, in terms of I call it a warm-up whiskey. Just because it's just get that approachability to it for a 46% dram, but it's just great wee starter for 10.
Absolutely brilliant starter. Mike wondered if I had one of those tonight as well, because it's a dram I quite often have. But I was looking at my shelf, and I don't have many below cask strength just now, which is quite hard going.
Problems, Russell.
I know, absolutely. First world problems, but I do need to stock up on some more sort of 40, 43, 46.
You can add water to some of these, and that'll bring them down to.
I do have a bottle of water with me tonight, so there's a fair chance I might be doing that. But yeah, I guess you go through a phase, or I certainly went through a phase when and maybe everybody does this. It'd be interesting to know what other people do, but you start drinking whiskey around about the kind of 40% mark, and then you get to know single malt stuff. Then you get to know single cask, and you end up going cask strength, and you turn into a wee bit of a cask strength snob for a while. But I'm now going all the way back down. I'm back onto the 40, 43s again. I don't know if that's common to other people, but as a result, my cupboard's full of cask strength, and I don't have a lot of just drinking drams.
I think it's genuinely one of my favourite things about whiskey is the different journeys that people go on, where they are on that journey, how they got there, and like actually that journey through. Because I think they do all differ massively. Yeah. Even from that, what was the first whiskey? In fact, there's a good question for the two of you. What was the whiskey that got you into whiskey?
The one that got me into properly. I mean, Tomatin was probably the first one I kind of thought I really enjoy this. I've been drinking other stuff for a long time, but my eye opener was Glendronach 12. That was a doorway into a world I never knew existed. Just a completely different thing. Yeah, so that was a game changer for me.
I was Dalwhinnie 15-year-old was first single malt that I had. Whenever I was out on a night out with friends, we would always end up in an Irish bar in Aberdeen. So we'd always finish, when we got there, we'd always start drinking Guinness and Jameson's, loaded with ice. Sank the Jameson's, and it was one night that the bar actually ran out of ice. So we're like, well, we're just going to have it neat. So we drank it neat, and I was like, well, it's not as bad as what I always imagined whiskey would be. But then when I tried, as part of my job at a local hotel, I was tasked with taking in some whiskies for kind of pre-dinner drinks. And one of those, we kind of looked at the Diageo Classic range originally. One of those was Dalwhinnie 15, so that was the one that kind of took me on that journey. It was like, actually, There's a story to tell in whiskey there, and it's been non-stop since.
Super. Nice
I
one.
know it's another couple we'll ask you in a minute. It's the Matthew's same as me with the Glendronach, and Dave's now recognising he's starting to put a few drops of water into his whiskies as well. So same question back to you then, Gary. What was your kind of entry?
No, well, I don't know whether it is a big surprise or not, but it was Glen Scotia double cask.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to most, when I took this job on some 7.5 years ago, I was not a whiskey drinker.
Oh, wow.
I was vodka and Coke was my drink of choice back then. But when I joined 7 years ago, 7.5 years ago, my boss, just so happened that my first week, my boss was off on holiday. So the plan was send me down to Campbelltown for the first week and get under the skin of Glen Scotia. And I just fell in love with the place.
Yeah.
And double cask. I mean, there is a very good reason I refer to that as whiskey flavoured iron brew. I think it's just so easy to drink. It's so well balanced that it just, I was pure like, no, this isn't what people talk about whiskey being.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people that don't drink whiskey have got that kind of almost that school milk perception.
Yeah.
Where they've maybe had one bad experience, or they know of somebody that's had a bad experience, and that's just all that lives in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that just opened my eyes, and it just as so my journey then went from double cask kind of onwards through the Glen Scotias. I've since discovered I've got a real soft spot for kind of Campbelltown and that real niche flavour profile. But it meant then it's then easier to then go from, especially going starting with double cask. Those sherry notes, then you go from a sherry, somebody gives you a sherry finish from somewhere else. If you like that, then you're off into that range, and then it's the tree just grows.
Yeah.
And that kind of way, that's kind of how it's evolved for me. But yeah, I'll always come back to double cask. Love it.
Yeah, it's great that everyone has a different story as well to tell on that. Yeah.
I like the notion of alcoholic iron brew. I was just thinking if it could be because Abby Clefane, you'll know Abby. You'll have met her plenty. Her a classic food and the whiskey pairings are sort of 10p crisps.
Yes, I love that chat. Or old school sweets. Somebody else did that one that I just have like refresher bars and things.
So the double cask could be paired with a roll and sausage then maybe.
It's not quite that breakfast whiskey. No space side, come on now, Russ.
We get asked quite often for food and whiskey pairings as well, and I think was it Stuart Buchanan we spoke to, and he said it's harder to get it wrong than it is to get it right when pairing food and whiskey.
Totally not. I think too many people are kind of daunted by it. It feels like it's a big scary world. But I actually did that was my kind of tasting class down at the Campbelltown Malts Festival this year. Was whiskey and food, and it was all about trying to break it down and give folk the basics of it. Give them an approach as to how they could start to think about it, and then go off and do it by themselves. And that's. Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as literally finding a flavour you like in the whiskey or the food, and then matching it with a similar flavour in the other thing. And then expanding from there as like take one simple ingredient, match it with another simple ingredient. So for me, one like we did if you went like double cask with that sweet toffee note from the bourbons, and you just went to a salted caramel. Or a salted caramel chocolate or something. That just seeing how those complement each other, see how those change each other, and then it's just wee increments from there. Yeah. At the end of the day, even if you try something and it does nothing, it doesn't change either. You're not lost anything.
No.
I mean, that's why I've ended up with the size I am. Do you know what I mean? It's just I just keep trying loads of stuff. It's all in the name of research, gentlemen.
Yeah. You and me both, Gary. You and me both. Exactly. So what was before Glen Scotia for you then?
The glamorous world of milk, believe it or not, Russell. Oh, wow. I was 7 years with Wiseman Dairies.
Okay.
In a marketing role. So yeah, both liquids that we go through quite a lot of, but
Yeah.
One slightly more fast paced than the other.
And not two that you want to mix either.
No, oh no, oh no.
We
No, you
had
don't
a
want
customer that took milk in his whiskey, didn't we?
Yeah, I used to try. It wasn't whiskey; it was Morgan's. I used to drink Morgan's with milk.
Really?
Yeah.
That explains a lot, Mike. Explains a lot.
Yeah, that's what I like about whiskey. Is you don't have to mix it with anything. And that's you're taking the food pairings to extreme if you're mixing it with milk. Cheese, yes.
That being said, the local dairy down near us one year did us when we did the rum finish festival edition. They did a rum finish whiskey and raisin ice cream. That was amazing. Absolutely amazing. It was one of those 3 days when it was sunny in Campbelltown as well, so it really helped.
The only day you need ice cream and it was there for
you. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Mondecoos.
We're into farming.
Fraser also used to work for Wiseman Dairies.
All right.
He's a newbie into whiskey, so I'm sending him. He's got some samples winging their way to him.
Okay.
To get him into it, based on that kind of very concept of try a few and tell me what you like, and then go from there.
Yeah.
He's saying Aberliver Abuna goes very well on a McFlurry. Which McFlurry, Fraser? Which McFlurry?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
I like the sound of
that. I would be interested if you that was a deliberate mistake or was that accidental? Yeah, I would like to hear a story about how that combination came about. Imagine you could be in a drive-through coming home from McDonald's and spill your whiskey into your McFlurry.
I mean, it's more the fact that he had an open glass of whiskey while he was doing the drive-through, though. That's more what concerns me.
Maybe a passenger. It'd be all right.
Here's hoping.
McFlurry one hand, hip flips in the other. The wife pulled away too early, and it just kind of yeah.
Absolutely.
Maybe. Well, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. Drunk night in Inverness, and after a session in the malt room. That's
okay.
If you'd have said a session in the malt room, I would still have believed that. To be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, what we hear malt room. There's so many great whiskey bars out there. Is there any that you frequent quite regularly that you would recommend to guys that maybe aren't?
I'm quite lucky. Obviously, I'm just outside Glasgow, so do you know what I mean? I'm blessed with the Pot Still, the Bonaccord, and now the Scotch Malt Whisky Society as well. There's just, but then that's the kind of big names. Realistically, but if you're in Glasgow city centre, do you know what I mean? Like Piper Bar just picked up Whisky Bar of the Year the other night at the awards as well. There are a wealth of good whisky bars in Glasgow. We're kind of spoiled, to be honest. But I'll always make a point of whenever I'm going to a show, is try and get out there. In fact, I was up in Inverness for the National Malts National Whisky Festival not that long ago. Popped in to see the guys at the malt room. That private tasting room they've got upstairs is just absolutely stunning. That's a cracking venue these days. I was in there about 5-6 years ago when they just no longer opened the doors, I'm sure. And now it's just absolutely rammed, and it's just a great selection of drams in there as well.
Yeah. I've been in. I haven't been to the private room, but just the bar downstairs I've been in. It's someplace.
I've not been yet. My daughter's just moved to Inverness, and her boyfriends and his friend have said they're keen to get me up to take me out to the malt room. So I'm definitely going to do that. Like,
you've no excuse now, then.
Absolutely not.
Well, that's it. Absolutely no. Honestly, it's cracking. Absolutely cracking.
I had in my pocket that night as well.
Well, stranger things have happened, Russell.
I've got to be impressed. Boy's got a job to do.
Yeah. Start the top shelf.
Yeah.
Aye, absolutely.
No even looking at prices, just random pointing. That one. Both.
Oh God, I've not had that one since 1983. I'll have that.
Brilliant, absolutely
brilliant.
Sorry, I was just going to say you've kind of landed on your feet with two fantastic whiskies to showcase and some great people to get involved in the industry. What's it been like for you just kind of getting involved with the group?
I genuinely couldn't have scripted it better, Russell, if I'm totally honest. So I came in, the Loch Lomond group took over in 2014. I came on board, obviously, 2015. And at that point in time, there was 2 of us in the marketing team. I doubled the marketing team. And it was just at the time of relaunching both brands. So within a month or so of me joining, we'd then relaunched Loch Lomond with 1 malt and 2 blends. And then we relaunched the 3 core Glen Scotia, so double cask, 15 and Victoriana. And that was it. It was 3 whiskies across both brands.
Right.
And it was just go from there with no distribution anywhere. But that was the kind of big challenge, was grow that distribution globally, get these wonderful whiskies out there and really spread the good word. It was just real learning as you go, and seeing these brands grow in the home market and abroad has just been magnificent. I mean, we're now a marketing team of close to 15. Glen Scotia winning best distillery of the year, best whiskey in the world.
Yeah.
Loch Lomond now having a range of 12 whiskies across malt, single grain, plus loads of new innovation products coming out as well. And it just keeps continuing rolling and growing and get out and building and bigger and better. It's been, couldn't have asked for anything better, Russell, if I'm being totally honest. Like I said, if I couldn't have scripted it better.
And loads of more growth to come. I mean, Loch Lomond, I guess, once upon a time, Loch Lomond didn't have that great a reputation a long time ago. So people are starting to rediscover it, or maybe get into it for the first time and actually thinking, wow, this stuff's actually fantastic.
Yeah, that's the thing. There was a long period where, well, ultimately the big rationale for the takeover was that pre the takeover, Loch Lomond Distillery wasn't really bottling a lot of stuff, and historically hadn't. A lot of stuff was going into blends. So we produce High Commissioner blend. So a lot of that's produced at pretty much all of that's produced at Loch Lomond, and a lot was going out bulk by the tanker load. And that was the real opportunity for the takeover, was flip that model on its head, kind of bring all of that other stuff down, get it cased, bottled, and out into the market. So we're in that position where we've got Loch Lomond itself has a history on the same site since 1966, but people view us as this new distillery.
Yeah.
So we're this new distillery that this year is going to bring out a 54-year-old.
Yes,
which is just madness.
Yeah.
Glen Scotia is a bit different because it's Campbelltown. Campbelltown is that bit different. Yeah. There is the cult following of everything Campbelltown, and I'm happy to say I'm part of that. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, I get bitten by the bug early on, and I get why folk are so hung up on it.
Yeah.
It's got a real. I think that the thing I love about it the most is that it's the one region that still has a real unique flavour profile that's different to the rest.
Yeah.
Because if you were to say to somebody, "What's a Speyside whiskey taste like?" that spectrum's so broad because there are so many distilleries. It's hard to pin down 3 or 4 words that would sum it up in terms of flavour profile. But I think that's much easier for Campbelltown with 3 distilleries. Even with all the kind of plans and kind of process, we'll still only be up to 5, 6 or 7 if you believe all the rumours. So it still makes us a small region.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exciting times for the town.
Well, a recovering region as well. I mean, I think that's one of the things where Scotland is so the whole of the country is so rich in history in Scotland, and we can go back. But Campbelltown in itself is just knee deep in history. So to see that kind of resurrection, or to see it kind of coming back to life again, I think is wonderful for the whole country to see.
Definitely. The resurgence of Campbelltown just puts such a big smile on my face. It's been, for the last few years, I've been puzzled to see the number of distilleries opening again on Islay. Do you know what I mean? That was an island that was creaking 4 or 5 years ago. With the infrastructure, never mind what it's going to be like come 3, 4, 5 years time when they've all opened the doors and the Fege Isle lasts for 3.5 months. And I was always going, why is nobody going half an hour down the road from Kennaicraig into Campbelltown, where you've got that the wealth of history, the names, the distilleries that you could resurrect very, very easily, and go from there. And honestly, I'm delighted to see guys like North Star coming down, the R&B guys opening their own distillery down there as well. I think it's going to be great for the town. The more reason for people to come to Campbelltown, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this day and age of travel, it's not difficult. There would have been a time people would have felt it was a long way away, but I mean, gosh, there's a distillery in the Ardnamurchan Peninsula. You've got one in the Morven Peninsula. You've got one in the Morven Peninsula. That's a long, long, long drive. So
to be fair, it is still a way to go. It's a bit. I mean, I'm happy to say it's a bit of a pain in the arse to get to. Like,
there's no reason you would go there other than whiskey, really, is there?
well, you're never passing through Campbelltown to go anywhere.
No.
Like, Campbelltown is a destination, and it's got whiskey, golf, and fishing.
Mm-hmm.
But the more and more whiskey there is, the more people are coming. But then that also being said, since I've joined this company and spent more time down in Campbelltown, almost everybody I meet that I mention it inevitably, I'm one of them folk. Somebody goes, "Oh, I used to go to holidays in Campbelltown," or "My granny used to take me down to Like, the number of people that have got a Campbelltown connection is massive, absolutely massive for a town that at its peak only had 9,000 folk. Never mind, more like about 6 now. But it's absolutely mad.
Yeah. We've got Paul Dempsey saying hello, and Dean Jode on last week's guest, both saying
Evening,
hello.
I'm ashamed to say I've never been. It's one of the parts of the world I've never been yet. Is Campbelltown. There's a couple of areas I've never. I was born in Inverness, in my defence, so I'm up the other end of the country. And
we'll not hold that against you, Russell.
Well, Aberdeen and Aberdeen's just quite far side for me.
In terms of geographically, Campbelltown, if it was to expand, would the Kintyre kind of peninsula, would that all be part of Campbelltown? Could you?
No. So as much as we put that on the map that it's the Kintyre Peninsula.
Yeah.
It's kind of, there's ultimately, and I can't remember the exact figure, but there is a radius from the town centre.
Right.
And that's where one of the issues the guys running the Beneturk gin. Yeah. We're looking at a distillery, but they're literally like a mile and a half outside that radius. So, which would have meant they would ultimately then would have had to be a Highland distillery.
Would it be Highland? It would be Lowland.
Yeah.
Yeah,
which would have made them Highland, which is just crazy when you think that's
the story of the Campbell of the Kintyre being the, I don't know if you know about the censorship of the BBC.
The angle of the dangle.
The angle of the dangle, yeah. And as they go erecting the Kintyre droop with his tourist escape with the BBC.
That was Mark Rainey that started talking about that, wasn't it? That was.
Was it Mark?
Yeah, it was Mark. Yeah, because I was quickly checking the time to see if we were past the threshold before he carried on his conversation. I think he even had the map behind him, and he was kind of giving it. If you can see.
Yeah. It's one of those conversations doesn't really need a visual aid, I don't think.
It doesn't, does it? It was brilliant. Loved it.
We'll be on to telegraph poles before you know it, Gary. Don't worry.
That's more of a Campbelltown topic, isn't it?
That's right. That's absolutely a Campbelltown topic. Yeah.
Do you know what? One of the mad things about it though is that conversely, one of the reasons why Campbelltown did so well was because way back in the early 1800s, it was easier to get from Glasgow to Campbelltown, or quicker to get from Glasgow to Campbelltown than it was to get from Glasgow to one of the Highland distilleries. Yeah. It would take you about 3 days return journey to get from Glasgow to the Highlands, one of the Highland distilleries, but you could do Campbelltown in 3 hours with a steamboat down the Clyde.
Yeah. And you also had that route straight into the Atlantic as well for export.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. The shipping route, bringing in the casks, the movement of people, the movement of the liquid and things. It was unlocked literally a whole new world.
Yeah. And then they took out the legalised it, and it ruined Campbelltown for a bit.
No, it wasn't necessarily the kind of legalisation. Like the legalisation helped us boom a good bit.
Yeah.
There's always been illicit distilling was rife in Kintyre. And I think it's why one of the other reasons why we did so well, that the distilling was always part of life down there. But the illicit stuff that they were doing down there was actually used to, it was kind of very obviously kind of small scale, because it basically had to be a still that you could, if you saw the excise man, pick up and absolutely hoof it. So yeah, it was small scale, but they would basically they would be doing distillation to sell locally to help pay their rent. So a lot of landlords back then would have turned a blind eye to it because they knew it was ultimately lining their pockets.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, they were all involved. And
exactly. Because all the leaf stuff was going to the blending houses.
Yeah.
So they weren't getting to see any of that. But one of my favourite stories from down that way, obviously there's plenty of them from Campbelltown, is how, because the kind of excisemen knew that illicit distilling was part of kind of life. Essentially, it was that kind of their way of making money. So they come up with this wonderful scheme to basically where you would bring in your still, and they would give you a lump sum of cash for it. What's that? What's the name for that again? You've just amnesty, a still amnesty, but they would give you cash in return for it, knowing that would then help you on your merry way to survive. But what they didn't realise was that most people would then go in, give them their still, get their cash, walk down the road to Robert Armour and Sons, the coppersmiths, and get a bigger and better still made.
Yeah.
I just thought that's a great name for a pub, the Amnesty Still.
Right. Can I call that? I'm having that.
Yeah,
trademark.
Get it written down. Absolutely.
That's how trademarks work, isn't it? You just dibs it. Dibs.
My dibs. I dibs it. I think that's how it works, eh? That's certainly how it used to work, for sure.
A friendly handshake, and that was it, wasn't it? I just recently did a piece on Robert Armour, and yeah, what a story he had as well. It's fascinating. And even the getting stills onto Arran and the like. And you just think back in those days, the transport and all that. It was so much quicker then than it is nowadays. You imagine having to commission a still.
There's no paperwork back then, to be fair though, Mike. Yeah. That's the.
But he's very meticulous with his paperwork, apparently. Like, kept a record of absolutely everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. And my favourite thing about Robert Armour and Sons was the fact that they practiced what they preached. Yeah. So when they converted the shop, which is now a cafe, I think, and they broke through into the basement area, there was essentially all of the trappings for distillation minus the still. Coppersmith also took the still with them. So he was distilling underneath the shop as well. Which, I suppose that's how you learn the trade, isn't it? You know what the best still to make is if you run tests.
You practice on it, yeah. And it's a wee bit of a shame. I mean, obviously, there will be illicit distilling going on in some parts of the world as well, but obviously not to the degree and the risk of what went on back then. But it's a shame that a lot of these stories are now history. We don't have that kind of, I wouldn't say we don't have the characters, because there's some great characters still in the industry, but things have got a bit tame and legal and kind of.
Yes, and there's a guy called Angus Martin down in Campbelltown who is just an absolute cracker of a gentleman, and he's written. God, I don't even want to see how many books he's actually written.
He's the historian, isn't he? Yeah.
Yes, and my favourite thing is his real focus is on the characters. Like he's like, loads of folk have written about the whiskey and the distilleries and all of that. He writes more about the people, and the stories behind the people, and who was running what distillery and why did they give that up, and then they married wee Jeannie. And I mean, I'm obviously trivialising that a lot, but he gives you those layers below the kind of bits that we all know, those interesting wee tidbits. But he's written, I want to say, 30, 40, 50 books on Campbelltown. Not necessarily just all about whiskey. The latter stuff's all been whiskey, but the history of the town, which are fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's cracking. Absolutely cracking.
So when you go into a bar now, what do you look for? You can't pick Glen Scotia Loch Lomond. This is
Honestly, I'm looking for something.
or something like that. We're not letting you off with that one.
I'll normally go for something I've not tried. Tends to be what I go for. To be totally honest, I think. Yeah, I've been drinking whiskey for 7 years, but obviously, the nature of the beast, a lot of that has been Glen Scotia and Loch Lomond.
Yeah.
I would definitely say I'm still at that bottom end of the curve on my whiskey journey, in terms of what I've tried and the experiences I've got. I'm not a massive peat head yet. I'm getting there. I think I'm really enjoying. I found a few Kalilas that I really enjoy, which I kind of really open my eyes into some nice peaty drams.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll always try and go for something different, something I've not tried before if I can get it. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah.
What about you guys? What are your go-tos?
I've kind of, anytime I see it in the bar, I tend to go for a Craigellachie 17. I just like that kind of sort of punchiness about it whenever I see it in a bar. And you don't often see it either. So it's the kind of one but like yourself, something I maybe haven't tried before, something a wee bit different, would be the usual kind of approach. I mean, if you're in a pub, it's all about an opportunity to try something different. And yourself, you say the learning curve never ends, does it? I mean, you're just
absolutely
you're continually learning. So
I think some of it as well kind of comes down to who you're with. Like if you're with a group of guys who are drinking malt, just maybe try to find something that everyone will enjoy. Or if you're around, you want to get something that's maybe a bit more challenging. Or and in fact, again, the joys of Glasgow and some of the guys the piper's very good at it. They will get bottles and just open them.
Yeah.
Stuff that you can't get, like, it just disappears instantly.
Yeah.
So they've got a load of daft mills and things like that they'll open and do really reasonably by the dram. I've got a lot of time for pubs that'll do that.
Yeah.
There's another distillery in I can't remember the name of that other distillery in Camilton. It's been there a while as well. It doesn't matter. Their bottles tend to, I can't remember the name. They tend to disappear, don't they? That's
yes, but and again, no, they'll do this. They'll do the same way. It's gone. But with them as well. That's the thing. It's the kind of stuff that a lot of people are buying and just sticking up the loft for 5 years. Or
Hazelbank or something, isn't it?
Yeah. Springburn. That's the one.
Yeah, that's right. Springfield.
Springfield. From Dufftown, is it? No, that's it. Yeah, but I mean, like, some folk are just buying it and then flipping it 20 minutes later for 3 times the price. Yeah. But that's why I absolutely take my hat off to these places that will get this stuff in and will crack it open and sell it to you at the RSP dram rate rather than the kind of flipping dram rate, which would be £1 million for a double.
Oh yeah, so was it Royal Mile Whiskies? I think that did that with some of their latest releases.
Their allocation,
yes. They put their full allocation to the trade, and I kind of take my hat off to them for that. That's a big statement to make in it, and I think a lot of the punters would have appreciated it, certainly.
For sure.
I mean, they would have just opened the door and just thrown the empty bottle outside, unfortunately, down that neck of the woods these days.
It's crazy. We probably lament it every week with whoever's on about this market, this FOMO, this flippers, and all this kind of stuff. It's a shame, but I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. And especially,
do you see the bubble bursting anytime soon? Because prices are mental. Like I said, there are literally bottles that will be released. I mean, I think probably the best example I saw was the local barley. That was still available retail from granted, a very small number of places. But it was going online at auction at 4 times face value.
£1,200 or something. I think I see it.
Yeah, and what? This surely cannot continue.
Yeah,
I think you're right. It has to eventually. We've had the same situation with Glen Scotia. Not with us. I mean, the batch 4 cast 10-year-old cast 10th batch for. So we'd about 18 bottles, just slowly, one at a time. People who knew the distillery and was aware this is good, buying a bottle, drinking it, maybe coming back a couple of months later again, another. Whittled down to about 12, and there was still 12 sitting there, taking up a lot of space on the shelf when they won the award, and they overnight
vanished.
Yeah, that was them gone, and then batch 5, and just crazy every single time ever since. So yeah, but we were saying earlier on about auction prices. You look at auction prices just now, and they're all much lower. You can get some good bargains in auction just now.
Yes.
So maybe
there are a few people have said that to me actually, that there are definitely bargains to be had at auction where people are.
There is that kind of the wannabe, your Macallan, the other Campbelltown malt, your Glenallachie, these kind of things are going up.
Yeah.
If you're not in that kind of
they're not the boom bust. Your Daft Mills and your other ones like that, they're starting to slow down. Ardnamurchan, but then Ardnamurchan are putting out a bigger release as well now. So
that's it. Once these guys, the inaugural release is gone, a couple of limited editions. Now, once they've got stock now for doing core ranges, kind of appeal, you can see that appeal dropping. And I like what Springbank are doing with the Campbelltown Loch. They're trying to get something out there.
Absolutely. No, absolutely nothing.
That's not going to be a collectible. But even, for us as a shop, the allocations of the 10 to 15, we don't get more than an allocation. It's like, well, how can we get more of the big stuff if we can't sell? So that
and I imagine your allocation lasts you, what, 15 minutes or so?
Oh, seconds.
Yeah.
15 seconds.
We ballot some of it now. We try and do fair. But you're always going to upset someone, and that's the.
No, definitely, and I think, like you said, that there are different people taking different approaches to it. Royal Mile, obviously, putting all of theirs into the trade. Just down in Dumfries last week, doing a tasting with Brian and the gang down at TV Watson, and I know anything allocated, he will keep some of it for the shop, and that's ultimately your reward for actually going into the store.
Yeah.
And it's the good thing that it does for them as well is that it makes people more inclined to keep coming back into the store. Because if they know there's going to be that kind of stuff there or available, they'll be more inclined to come back in, which is, I think, is a nice way of doing it as well.
Yeah. And so let's move on from that, because I think we kind of talk about that every week almost. Let's talk about whiskey that is getting open and getting drunk. And you alluded to it near the start of the conversation. Glen Scotia last year winning, or it was 2022's awards, but it was the tail end of last year, Whisky of the Year, and basically wiped the floor of the Campbelltown. I was lucky enough to be down at the awards, and just wiped the floor. And then not long after that, the 26-year-old won the Whisky of the Year.
Yeah, it was the 25. So it was the 25 that picked that up first. Actually, it was the best whiskey in the world came first, and then best distillery in Scotland kind of rolled through and just kind of swept us all off our feet a wee bit. And I think it was one of these things.
It's funny, something like that, because normally something like that, as Russell said with the Glenallachie, the batch, an award like that, usually you see the whiskey from that distillery all of a sudden become one of these must-haves. You guys have managed it so well that you've still got this core range. Is that down to, how much is that down to market, and how much is that down to quantity of cans that you're able to kind of manage it well?
It's definitely a balancing act, Mike. That's for sure. But I think it was part of the ethos from day one of the relaunch was to be able to bring a range from Glen Scotia that represented the Campbelltown style, but was readily available year round. And I suppose it's ultimately why when we initially launched, we launched with 2 no-age statements. That allowed us to tweak those recipes through the year and keep that consistent. And then obviously kind of growing through, able to kind of add the age statements and that kind of stuff. But it's definitely been a growth journey for us. If you rewind to when Iain joined us, which would be he must be about 14 years or so now. We're only doing 80,000 litres a year. We're doing 3 mashes a week, which is just mental. Yeah. Fast forward to current day, we're at 540,000 litres a year.
Yeah.
and we're now looking. Well, I just saw recently we're looking to take on 3 new operatives, and that pushes them. We're ultimately going to full 24/7 production. Ultimately, the max capacity we can get to with the setup we've got, which I think pushes us close to 700,000, if we can get there. But like I said, even Iain joining 13, 14 years ago, going from that 80,000 to the 500, that obviously we kind of ramped up from there. But that stock's obviously only at its oldest 13 years old. So we've got a couple of tough years where we'll get that kind of 80,000 litres of alcohol that we've got to manage through. But come 3-4 years' time, we will be in a much, much better position. And you'll hopefully see a lot more of the kind of 15-18s and stuff about.
So if there's going to be a bit of pain, it's going to be short-lived, is what you're saying.
Yes, oh no, definitely. And that's, I think if anything, the awards last year, I mean, obviously we entered them. You need to. But I don't think we expected to be that successful at this stage. I think, if anything, if we'd been able to, again, write that script right at the start, would have said within 10 years we want to be really challenging for these big awards, these big accolades. But to hit it in year 6 is just mental. And it's been so good in terms of it's really engaged a lot of the markets. It's really put the focus on it. And not that, again, there wasn't focus on it. But it's just been another layer from a consumer point of view. You guys all know that there are most whiskey drinkers that will come through the shop and will be watching tonight know Campbelltown, know what Campbelltown whiskey tastes like, and know about that phenomenon. But the flip side being that there is a swathe of volume that goes through the multiple grocers and that kind of stuff, and your 3-second, what's this all about? No, I don't like that sound of that decision process. And to be able to put the makers of the best whiskey in the world on the front of that, it's a massive thing to be able to do. And then to be able to go makers of the best whiskey in the world plus the best whiskey distillery in Scotland. It's the kind of stuff that can start to sway some decision processes. Yeah. And it gives folk that they don't know about Campbelltown, they maybe not heard of Glen Scotia, but it gives them a confidence in the spirit that's in that. It's like the old wine argument. I mean, for those of us that aren't maybe as knowledgeable as you guys about wine, I mean, I obviously went through my phase of you would buy what's on deal, what's down, what have they knocked down to a $5 this week? And of that set, you would go, oh look, that's got a bronze medal from 2016. That'll do. Yeah. That's the winner. Kind of mentality a wee bit, and it really does. Like I said, but being able to have those 2 big claims, it just really bolsters that confidence, definitely, with the consumers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so just while we're talking, I'm just going to say cheers to Dave Muir, who's watching.
Dave,
a gift from him sent up. This is the port cask.
The shop. Very nice.
Shop distillery. So I've still got some left.
Mine's is long gone.
I'm going to pour me one of these guys.
That's the open. Yeah, that's a question I want to come back to. Something I'll try and not forget.
The open special edition.
I guess just to get on the subject of what Mike's saying about getting out there and being known. I mean, from a drinker's point of view, it's a bit like going to your student union and finding a really good band that becomes big. You kind of don't want that. You want people to know about them, but you don't want people to know about them.
Yeah.
Same thing happens with some whiskies that you get into. You're aware that they're still kind of just sitting just a little bit below the radar, and you can get easy access to it, and you want to talk about it, but you don't want to talk about it because you don't want it to suddenly become the next FOMO and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, unreachable, and you just can't get it.
And for me, Glen Scotia's there and Glen Cadam. So as much as I'm absolutely thrilled for you guys with the awards, there's a bit of also going, oh, don't speak about it.
I feel your pain on it, Russell. But like I said, it's definitely short-lived. I think there are much greener pastures coming.
No, absolutely. But I mean, within the group as well. But we're not even mentioning Loch Lomond. Loch Lomond's a phenomenal whiskey. You're doing everything at 46%. The variety stuff that's there as well. And we talk about peat, and you're saying you're not quite into that kind of smokehead stuff yet. But if you're not, if for me, if you're not a fan of a peated whiskey, or you think you're not a fan of a peated whiskey, the Loch Lomond peated whiskies are the ones you should be trying, because that's a very accessible level of peat that
and it's
together.
But and this is the mental thing about it. So the Inchmore 12 is a cracking dram, and I love it. From a tasting point of view, it's a great fun dram to have in a lineup, because it tells two different stories, and it's genuinely the whiskey that started me going, I might actually quite like peat.
Yeah.
Because the big misconception about peat is that peat's just one thing. Peat is just peat. But ultimately it's three things. It's smoky peat, spicy peat, and a medicinal peat. And it's all about how you distill it. And the big thing, obviously, for us at Loch Lomond is about creating as much flavour through distillation, with almost everything being matured in bourbon. It's all about bringing the flavour in distillation and letting them mature through in those bourbon casks. So with our still setup, it allows us to we can create 5 different peated spirits at Loch Lomond, which is just mental. Because when you think about a standard or a normal whiskey distillery, we'll just have these guys here, the swan neck pot stills, and the main characteristics of a swan neck pot still that will define the spirit character will be the shape of the pot base, the kind of width and the height of the neck, and the angle of the line arm. But once those things once you've installed your stills, they're set. You can't change them. You can't do a run and change the angle of your line arm by 5 degrees for the next run. So it means ultimately you'll only ever, from a swan neck pot still, get 3 types of spirit: unpeated, heavily peated, or medium peated. And then you're relying on the casks to do a lot of the kind of changing and bringing the different flavour profiles into it. But because we can create those 5 different peated spirits, we can pick out 3 of them, and just so happens that because of the way we're running those stills, we can find one that's got the smoke, one that's got the spice, and one that's got the medicinal. So rather than with the swan neck, if your heavily peated spirit is very smoky on day 1, 5 years' time, your spirit's still going to be very, very smoky. If it's spicy on day 1, shock horror, it's going to be very spicy day 25. But by having those different individual spirits with the different characters, we can mature them individually and then bring them together, and it just brings a really layered, nuanced peat character to it, rather than a lot of them can be overwhelming. Ultimately, that's what I think. That's what I would call the school milk experience. For a lot of folk, is that they have one of their mates thinks it's hilarious just to give you a Lafroig for your first whiskey, and you're farting peat for 3.5 weeks, and you go, I don't want any more of that.
Yes, I'm not going to drink whiskey again.
But that's it. It just overwhelms your palate. All you can taste is peat. Where I think that balance of the capabilities of Loch Lomond allow us to create that balance. And it really kind of opens your eyes on it. But all the spirits that are in it are big 50 ppms, like in our Beg or a Lafroig.
Yeah. But just the fruitiness comes through really quite strong, but with a beautiful twist. Callum,
yes, that's that. Well, that's the kind of that's one of those defining characters of Loch Lomond. So we really define the Loch Lomond signature style as fruit from the long fermentation and the straight neck stills. The honey sweetness coming from the American oak, and then a wisp of soft smoke coming in as well. So that use of the peated spirits too.
Callum Brenton, who you'll know well, is absolutely loves the Loch Lomond.
Callum who?
Renbank, I think.
Renbank, right? That's
Callum Renbank.
Sounds like something you do request when somebody's engaged. I'll get a ring back.
He's also got a whole load of questions here, so he's clearly not been busy enough up in Rassay or whatever it is he is.
He's in a hot tub somewhere.
He's in a hot tub somewhere, absolutely.
With a miniature to make him feel like he's got really big hands.
On top of a mountain somewhere.
Right.
So he wants to know what's your favourite Glen Scotia from the core range. So we're maybe thinking we already know that with double cast, but
yeah.
And your favourite Glen Scotia you've ever tried, And then the same questions with regard to Loch Lomond.
Core range. So the folk get annoyed at me when they crack out this. There's the whole, what's your favourite of the range? I think that there is a lot to be said for who you're with, what mood you're in, what time of day it is, all that kind of bit. But gun to my head, I can only pick one Glen Scotia from the core, and it's 15.
Okay.
15, I think, for me is Campbelltown in a glass. It's got all of that, all the things I love about a Campbelltown whiskey, just balanced wonderfully.
And again, an absolutely fabulous price for a 15-year-old.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of something we've made a concerted effort to try and do across the range, Russell. It's again being new air, or like I would say, like explorer whiskies almost. Not everybody knows about it. Is if that 15-year-old sitting on the shelf at 70 quid, it's going to sit there for a while.
Yeah.
From the get go. But it's, I mean, when we launched that, it was what, 50 quid or something nonsense like that.
Yeah.
And it's, don't get me wrong, it's crept up, but everything bloody has, unfortunately. So yeah, I would say Scotia 15 and the Loch Lomond. That's a tougher ask. I think I would probably say the single grain. Again, that one, that's just, I can't see past that. It's just so easy drinking. It's versatile as well. I love it neat. I love it a bit of water. I love it a bit of ginger ale and some lime. Yeah. Although no, I'm taking that back. Right, so if it's not, so that's my core range. Best of all time, Loch Lomond. I would say there was a wine yeast single cask we did. Okay. That was a distillery exclusive, which is weird because we don't let people in the distillery, which meant I get loads of it. It was magic.
A garage full of the stuff.
yeah. I've got McMyra out there as well. There's so wine yeast. We've done some mad stuff with Chardonnay wine yeast. We've also done some Sauvignon wine yeast. And wine yeast is a bitch to get right. It's one of these things where we benefit so much. Loch Lomond now benefits so much from a history of bulk whiskey, where ultimately John Peterson, who was our master distiller for a while, was afforded time to get stuff right. Because it was bulk and we were selling stuff at 3 and 5 years old, there wasn't that big production pressure to keep everything powering through. So let them do things like play with long fermentation, so we ferment for a minimum of 92 hours, and introduce things like wine yeast, and that Michael Henry loves a wine yeast. So wine yeast is more difficult because it prefers a longer, slower fermentation. So we'll do some wine yeast runs basically during the shutdowns. So everything else gets the maintenance done, but the washbacks don't get cleaned all the time, and they're maintained as they go through. So we'll basically fill the washbacks with, and we'll put the wine yeast in, and we'll let it sit for, I think the longest we've let them sit is 2 weeks. Okay. And wine yeast brings this real hard to describe flavour. It's like there's an effervescence to it. It's like I would say it's like refreshers, sherbet sweets that it really brings to the flavour profile, and it's mad. If we do another one, I will make sure I get you guys some. That's for sure. I would say is my Loch Lomond. Glen Scotia, I would say it would have to be a festival edition. Mm-hmm. And again, if you had to push me, controversially, I'd say the rum finish. Right. Did a Guyana peated rum finish, which
2018 or something like that, was it?
Yeah. Yes. 18. 17 or 18, aye.
Yeah,
actually, it was the black and the gold. I just think that molasses rum, the melted brown sugar, sweet note with a peat just worked super, super well. 2019, thanks, Callum.
Oh, I got that right as well. Cheers.
And I might get shot by the brand team for telling you this, but insider knowledge, there is another rum finish coming, and it will be more widely available than the festival edition.
Fabulous.
Yeah, we've got.
You don't know that. So guys watching
I,
home, you knew that here.
you can see my bottle there you go, of the 2020.
Actually, a wee Tawny Port up there as well.
That's my third bottle of that. I absolutely love this stuff. It's fantastic. I just
Yeah.
haven't cracked that one open yet because I know it's going to disappear quickly, so I need to kind of pick a moment.
It absolutely will.
The red wine, the Bordeaux from last year was fabulous as well.
Yeah, it's always been that. I've always loved every release of them, to be honest. And we don't do masses of peated spirit in Glen Scotia. We only do about 6 weeks of the year, and most of it goes into that release, to be honest. Where it was a nice kind of switch for the red wine to go fully unpeated. For that was fully unpeated, and then into the Bordeaux, which was yummy red fruits.
These are the kind of whiskies that you can pick up in auction relatively close.
Yeah.
To your RRP.
And I love that. Like, it seems weird for me to say. Like, most brands.
About a year ago, they all went crazy. Having said that, they were about twice the price about a year ago. So they're maybe starting to settle down to some kind of normality now. But
there is. Yeah, I think a lot of the brands like Macallan and stuff will be delighted to see their stuff going 4 times the RRP, and kind of driving that up. But ultimately, we want folk to be buying it and drinking it at the end of the day. And if you can go online and you can buy it at auction at retail, then you're going to be more inclined to buy it and drink it. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
What you're saying is you haven't got a hotline to a sculptor who's going to make you kind of a bottle holder, sort of hand or something like that.
No, I'm just Callum's currently holding one for me just now. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to get it back as I sent it. To be fair, it's probably going to be a bit lighter.
So Callum's talking about the Tawny Port from the UK Championship. That was a question. How did they sort of link with the Scottish Open? Or no, the Open. In fact, it wasn't the Scottish Open; it was the Open.
Yes,
how did that kind of come about? Yeah.
I don't know the kind of background to where that came from. Okay. But I know basically Glenfiddich had it before, and we just picked it straight up from them.
Yeah.
On the back of that, and it's one of these things where Loch Lomond. Loch Lomond I love the distillery, and there's been many ways of going from the official line of Scotland's most capable and adept distillery to the Willy Wonka of whiskey, to just Mad Scientists Club kind of idea. But it's not an easy thing to boil down. Again, coming back to that retail environment, if I pick that up and go, right, tell me about Loch Lomond, go. I'm going to need 7 of these across, and nobody's going to read that to really get it. But where for a lot of that, again, I'm generalising here a lot, but in terms of that volume side of things, folk go, oh, whiskey and golf, I get that, that's fine. Yeah. Oh, there's a golf themed whiskey. Oh, it's the Open, right? Excellent, done. And it makes a lot of sense, and it gives us a really solid platform. And a lot of channels and a lot of markets across the world as well it gets that initial interest, and then it allows you to then make that step on. Once you've got the interest and you've got them in, then you can really start to build and really start to tell your story. So it's been one that's really, really grown going through, and we always knew. So it was always we'd signed that 5-year deal that we knew encompassed the 150th. Open, and there was always going to be a build to that, but it was just great to see. I mean, so we normally have at least 2 special edition products, so we had an Open special edition, and again concerted effort with the 2, so that the Open special edition and an Open course collection. The Open course collection tends to be an aged, limited availability. You're talking like 3,000 to 4,000 bottles worldwide, normally aged 20 plus, around that kind of way. Anything in the high 150, 200 quid mark. Special finish, we'll do something with the whiskey that tries to relate to the course or where we are. So this year it was all about red wine, claret jug. Last year for St George's, we got some English oak casks made for us to finish that whiskey. So again, kind of that nod. But then we do the open special edition. So that goes from 3,000 to 40,000 bottles worldwide. And you're talking more the 40, 45 quid approachable price point. And we'll follow the same kind of theme, but we obviously kind of need to dial it down. So last year, instead of virgin English oak, we used virgin American oak. Much more accessible, much more easily available for us. Instead of using a named Bordeaux wine for the 22 this year, we just used just standard Bordeaux wine casks. But it also meant this year with 150th we had to up it a wee bit. So we did 150 bottles of a 29-year-old finished in Japanese Mizunara oak.
Ooh.
And that was a beautiful stuff. I get the chance to try like that much. Because that stuff, that we talk about stuff just vanishing. Like we hadn't even kicked off the proper competition, and we'd sold everything we had on the stand. Like through the practice days, it just walked out the door. And it's one of the great things about being able to be there with this big presence and let folk try the whiskies. We welcome them in. We'll do a tasting of the range and off they go.
I love the thing. I mean, that connection as well, because I love and I don't know if you're changing the connection to the lochs, Inchmurren and Inchmoon. Is that going to come off the labels?
No. So it's still there. We have. I don't want to say we've dialed it down. I think one of the things we found. So we're going right back to where we were to start with. If you remember, we started with Loch Lomond, the original, and the two blends. We kind of evolved from there, and we added bits on, and I think it was quite. I don't think anybody will mind me saying it was quite sales-led to start with. So like you would, a market would say, "Oh, we really want an age statement. Oh, there's a 12. Oh, then everybody wants the 12. Oh, I could do with something straight up. Oh, there's an 18. Oh, everybody wants the 18. Mm-hmm. Oh, I used to have Inchmurren. Right, okay, there's Inchmurren. So we took the chance with doing the refresh and upgrading the labels to basically hit a hard reset and say, if we were to take all these whiskies now and look at a full range that, not that it didn't make sense, but if you were to start again, what would that range look like and how would we refer to them? Mm. And the key thing for us was we would call them all Loch Lomond to start with. So you've now got the 3 Loch Lomond 12s, but it's Loch Lomond 12 perfectly balanced, Loch Lomond 12 Inchmurren, Loch Lomond 12 Inchmoon. So we still have that island connection, and we still call out the island collection on it. But the other thing that we've really done, and again coming down to that consumer side of things, is really tried to call out flavour profiles. So I think we've even done it on we didn't do it necessarily on the open specials. So you've got the perfectly balanced, the Inchmurren's all about the fruity and sweet, Inchmurren being that spicy character. 14 all about fruit and cinnamon, so that it gives somebody, as they pick it up, they've got a very clear expectation of that flavour profile they're going to get from that whiskey just from a quick look.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you're right from a marketing point of view. I suppose it could be seen to be confusing, but from a whiskey geek point of view, it's a nice little rabbit hole to go down to get to understand. And from working the shop point of view, it's a nice story to get to know.
Definitely.
To celebrate.
And I think again sorry for interrupting. The main thing and the thing I love about both Loch Lomond and Glen Scotia is that the stories that we tell and the stories behind all the stuff we do are very, very genuine. We've got no need to come up with wonderful stories about, oh, this cask was picked by wee Billy as he walked past in 2019. Because it's things like, so I get Inchmoon being the peated one. Inchmoon, so they're both islands and on the loch itself. And the Scots Gaelic translation of Inchmoon is the peaty isle. So we've not just picked an island because it is an island on the loch. It makes sense in terms of the spirit that's in that. And the same with Inchmurren. Inchmurren is the grassy isle, so it kind of calls out the kind of. I personally get it as like kind of fresh cut grass, slightly into a kind of floral note of that spirit when it comes off the still. But albeit it's really into the fruity character as it gets a bit older as well.
I loved your analogy about the kind of mad scientist kind of. And I'm sure I don't know if Michael will be watching or not, but I'm sure he won't mind that. But Michael being that kind of really quiet, softly spoken, such an intelligent guy, you find yourself getting more and more closer to the screen when he's talking because
definitely.
You just get sucked into the amount of knowledge he's got, but there's that little twinkle of mad scientist there as well, isn't there? It kind of
No, 100%, and there is there is nobody I trust more with cask finishing and stuff. The guy, I honestly don't know when Michael Henry sleeps. So when you consider he is master blender for the group,
yeah.
So the group covering Loch Lomond, Glen Scotia, and Little Mill. Never mind blends. We still do some private label stuff, plus single casks. And then you consider things like when we did our Loch Lomond 14. He went off and just did some trials with some French oak, like just a wee investigation into terroir and casks and stuff. So he was basically trying to see how. So if you think of the whole concept of terroir, obviously being the soil affects the vines affect the grape, grapes affect the wine. Makes sense.
Yep.
Mike was like, right, so in terms of the trees, if you put that into kind of trees, soil affecting the tree affecting the wood affecting the cask affecting the whiskey. So he basically took our spirit, so he took our Inchmurren spirit and tried it in, I think, 4 or 5 casks from different regions in France. And he said the difference in the 5 of them was mental, like wildly different. To the point, and he ended up, he settled on Limousin oak from the Limousin region, which brought a wonderful spicy character. So that's the finishing cask we use for the 14-year-old. But it's just that pure, I'll just go and let's have a wee look into terroir. Never mind, like I said, the 14 other jobs he's got, plus a family life. And he's interested in rugby and all that. And you're pure, like, genuinely, when do you sleep, Michael?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, fascinating.
It's mad. I've got so much respect for that man, but I will trust his judgment on spirits. Like if I come up with a weird and wonderful idea and he shoots it down straight off the bat, then it's dead for me. Like there's no pure. Oh, I think that would still be dead good. See if Michael tells me it would be rubbish, then I know it's going to be rubbish. That's fine, and I'll move on.
Yeah.
He's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. But then you've got the other side of that. You've got Mr. McAlister down in Glen Scotia doing his master distiller bit down there, and I think one of my favourite things about this year's festival edition was the fact that it was slightly younger. Same with last year's as well. In fact, last year's I think was the first one. Would have been the 10-year-old. Where you could comfortably say that all of the spirit in that was produced under Iain McAlister's watch, and you can call it that trinity of that's not trinity, but that combination of the Iain McAlister spirit, working then with Michael in terms of that cask selection of that historical Campbelltown region to bring just an amazingly just balanced mental spirit that's so different from the Glen Scotia core range. But oddly familiar to it, and it's just the combination of the two of them I think is just wonderful.
It's such a great guy to talk to, just about everything. Being a local lad and having all that kind of. I mean, you can completely feel his passion for Campbelltown, for the area.
Yes, absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah.
We're talking about the whole thing about wanting to be selling or making whiskey that people will drink. The latest marketing with Iain drinking the drink and then talking your way through it in the kind of social media clips, to me, genius, because that makes you want to drink it. If I was a collector, I wouldn't be looking at that thinking, "Oh, I need to collect that." I'd be like, "I want to drink that."
Correct. No, exactly.
He's drinking it, so yeah, I love that as well. Yeah.
And Iain for me ultimately is Glen Scotia. Yeah. We did a piece where we were looking at some new, this was kind of a few years back, and looking at some new kind of communication side of things, and what do we want to say about Glen Scotia? And you do this usual marketing bit of what's the personality of Glen Scotia, and you write down the kind of traits of what you think that personality would be. and then we all wrote it down and we put it on did the big flip chart bit as you do. And then you step back from it and you go, that's Iain McAlister. We have literally just written down Iain McAlister's personality on a flip chart. And that's it. He just embodies Glen Scotia for me. Yes.
We had, so I don't know if you know, has he spoken to you about the Telegraph poll?
He's not, no.
so this is Mike. You're on mute, Mike. So I'll just stay there.
I'm going to go for. I've heard this story so many times, but
I'll keep it short.
It's a good story. Sorry, I just muted myself because we had issues on the Facebook channel, so I had to go and just solve that. So in case anyone heard me cursing and swearing at a computer, I put myself on mute. So, apologies to everyone who kind of cut off there. We're back now.
Well, you're just Facebook guys. You're just back in time for the Telegraph poll story. I wish Iain was on tonight to actually say it himself, but he just happened to be. It's one of these things, you know, when you get suddenly fascinated by something you never knew you were fascinated by before, and you start asking questions in your head that you never ever thought you'd ever ask yourself. But he got speaking to a local telecoms engineer who was just happened to be outside the road doing a bit of repair. And the guy pointed out to him that the telegraph pole that he was actually attending and fixing and using to get to the wires and stuff that day was the oldest telegraph pole in Scotland. Right? Yeah, well, exactly. You see, yes. Now you want to know why? How come?
And how does this guy know this?
That's right. So the questions just start coming. So yes, I've sown the seed. So you'll need to speak to Iain about it the next time and see if he's getting any further. But I do understand.
I'm directly after this. I don't care if he's involved.
I do believe the oldest surviving telegraph pole is actually in a museum somewhere in Orkney.
Well, then that's not news. That's like Glen Turret, and it's pure. Oh, the oldest working distillery. Aye, very good.
But the oldest one in use is somewhere in Campbellton. So not only do you need to talk to Iain about it, but he needs to actually take it and show you.
Yes, listen, absolutely, absolutely. Do you know? But then that's the thing. Honestly, like that was the most heartbreaking thing of COVID was that it stopped me going to Campbelltown.
Yeah.
That was 2 years, 2 and a bit years, where I just. It's not that I couldn't go, because obviously there were times where they would say it's you can go for work and these kind of things. But when you look at it and you go, right, well, I'm coming from Glasgow, an area that's got an infection rate of mental at the peak, realistically, and Argyll and Bute was always way down the list in terms of infection. I'm like, can I really justify being the big bad Ouija that's pure rolling through and pure like, what are you doing here? Tell me. So yeah, it was like 2.5 years that I was away, and my first time back was the Malts Festival back in May, and it was just a genuine delight to be back, and to see the town buzzing with people, and buzzing with people from all over the world again. That's the best thing. There was folk from America. There was guys come over from Dubai, Sweden, we get all the usual Swedes, Norway, Norwegians, Germans. A lot of familiar faces, but great to see some new faces as well this year.
And was it as busy as kind of anticipated, or busier perhaps?
Busier, Mike. Definitely busier. I would say it was mad. Great atmosphere. Again, we were very, very blessed with the weather. We managed to keep the sunshine through the Wednesday. Yeah, and the challenge for us is always trying to come back the year after and do it bigger and better within the confines of Campbelltown. There are only so many hotel rooms, so many campsites, and even within Glen Scotia, we've only got so much space. It was nice this year to be able to. We'd previously done 2 dinners, one on the Tuesday, one on the Wednesday, but we could only really take 40 or 50 people, and each of them just down to the size of the venues, and you've got to balance the size of the venue versus that experience that people can get. Like we probably could have. Crammed 15 or 20 into one or two at least one of the venues, but it wouldn't have been as good for everyone. But this year we managed to get a venue just outside of town, so we bussed everyone out. I say outside of town, it's like 2-minute bus ride, but we managed 140 in the room, and that was just the best fun.
Yeah.
Like just seeing everybody all sitting, chatting, sharing their dram, and yeah, great fun.
I've got to get down. This has got to be one of our. So we've not really kind of managed to do much kind of trips to festivals really as such, I guess. But Mike and I have spoken about maybe highlighting a couple that we should try and get to. So Campbellton's definitely one that's got my vote for sure. Absolutely. In fact, that's top of my vote. I don't care where else we go.
Yeah.
In fact, let's go Campbellton twice.
Again, it's one of these things that where, and I don't even know who made the decisions originally. We're talking about, I think we're in the 11th year now. But that decision to have the Campbelltown Malts Festival dovetail into the Fege, and it just makes so much sense. Like, there's no point in trying to pull everybody to Campbelltown for 4 days in the middle of June when nobody else is going there. But if you know there's going to be a movement of people down that region anyway, all you're saying to them is, "Well, just come 3 days earlier." Just come a couple of days earlier and come down to Campbelltown, and then go to the Fege.
Yeah,
and that's ultimately how it started. But now it's growing and it's existing off its own off its own momentum.
Yeah.
And it's great to see, definitely. And like I said again, the more distilleries opening in Campbelltown will bring more people, and the town will be busier.
For sure, absolutely.
I was lucky enough to be down in 2017. I was there as part of the Springbank School, and
that's what it's called.
School? I don't remember school whiskey.
School of Whiskey, yeah. But you're going to see the buzz around the place. And I've always wanted to go back and just never had the chance to. I
would be delighted to welcome you to Campbelltown.
Yeah,
it would be more than happy to have you there as my guest.
Okay, well, let's get.
Just for you, though. I mean, I'll let you fight it out 2 hours.
Just one. Oh, no, okay. Russell, you're sacked. There we go. That's the decision made.
I don't need to worry about when I'm going to get a day off. Then that's fine. I'll see you tomorrow.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
There we go. Fantastic. So, moving on. What have we not talked about yet?
What's that?
Something we haven't covered yet.
Tractors. Talk some new stuff. So we've got, because of the capabilities we've got, we're kind of trying to be. We don't want to just kind of. No, it's not necessarily rest on the laurels. It is a wee bit. But again, because of the capabilities we've got, we're trying to be quite innovative as a group, I suppose. So we've got we brought out a new single grain Spearhead.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still using the Kofi still 100% malted barley, but it's using infrared toasted casks. Fancy. But it brings out a real sweetness to it. So it's almost like a mix between. It's like a hybrid between Irish and bourbon, and that's doing wonders for us. Doing quite a lot in the on trade actually. The guys are mixing the hell out of it.
Okay.
And that's been really good fun. We've got blended malts coming down the roads. Mm-hmm. And again, with that kind of classic Loch Lomond style, there's very much a focus on flavour, but with trying to do that modern trendy thing of the unexpected twist. So we'll get some blended malts. Hopefully, I think they'll be out by the end of the year. So we'll leverage obviously a lot of our internal spirits, but we are bringing in some outside spirits as well to make them like actually properly blended malts rather than just a lot of the flavours we can produce at Loch Lomond, but it would still just be a single malt. But we're bringing in, let's say, those unexpected twists to some of the flavours and really kind of, but staying very flavour focused as well. I think that's some of the great fun stuff, specifically with Loch Lomond, that it gives us the capabilities to do. Plus, we've got more of that volume side of things from Loch Lomond to be able to do it.
Okay.
If we're at Glen Scotia, currently at that 550 100,000 kind of mark per year. We can do 5 million litres of malt out of Loch Lomond every year, which is a fair old step up. You consider there's currently only about 1 million litres a year coming out of Campbelltown as a whole.
5 million.
5 million just in malt, but we also do 20 million in grain.
Bloody hell. Bloody hell. You could
Same,
just run the whole Scottish whisky industry on your own.
Well, it's one of the big reasons why we're not open to the public. Ultimately, because it's a very industrial site. We're not. Plus, it's retrofitted. So we used to be an old dye works. Dye works, yes. I sold it for fabrics.
Yeah.
The distillery itself used to be the boiler house, so it's been retrofitted into there. So it's not got your classic one way round route of here's the mill, here's the mash tun, here's the wash packs, here's the stills. Oh, we're in a gift shop, kind of idea. It's upstairs. Down. Watch your head. Don't trip over that. Don't touch that. That's hot. Don't fall down that ladder. It's not the most accessible tour route. But that's because we're pumping out 5 million litres of this amazing quality spirit, and this wee distillery shoehorned into a boiler house.
It's a proper working site, though. I like.
Yeah, exactly.
What appeals to you more, Gary? The adventurous kind of flexibility of Loch Lomond, or that traditional kind of character of Glen Scotia?
Oh, pick your favourite child. Jeez.
Favorite whiskey, what's the most intriguing? Because obviously we've got tradition in whiskey, we've got that kind of old school character, but a lot of these new guys, so I would kind of pitch Loch Lomond in that kind of more adventurous style of it, where you can do more. You've got a bit more freedom to play with. So what's more exciting for you?
Within our stuff.
Yeah.
I've just got such a soft spot for Glen Scotia, and I can't rationalise away for it. I just love that profile of the spirit out of Glen Scotia. It just talks to something deep in my core, and it's like I said, I understand why folk can be so fanatical about Campbelltown malts from that basis. But the flip side is that I can totally appreciate when distilleries are off doing very unique things, I think one of the things I love is when a distillery's got a very clear vision of, no, this is what we are and this is what we're doing. I think Rassie's been a great example of that, where from the get-go, even before it was whiskey, they were happy to tell you, this is what it's going to taste like. In fact, do you know what we'll do? We'll just send you out some samples of the spirit at 18 months, 24 months, 26 months, all the way through before it got to whiskey, and we'll pretty much tell you what it's going to be like, and we'll let you try all the different bits. But they had that one singular vision and confidence in their spirit. It's just, I think that's a real good approach, and it seems to be, I think, that the big change for this tranche of new distilleries that we're seeing booming out, they're all coming at it. They're all putting a lot of the work in beforehand. I think you would find a lot of distilleries and it's that production pressure of, we need to get up, we need to be distilling as soon as we can so that we're making whiskey as quickly as we can. Where you're finding so many of these distilleries are putting a lot of work in up front, to the point that their new make is absolutely bang on once it comes off the still. I mean, you just need to look at the number of these new guys that will sell the new make. The Aquavita from Lindor's a good example, or even guys just selling bottles of the new make, because they know the quality of the spirit is good straight off the still, and the benefits of that mean that when it comes to 3 years old, it's going to be good whiskey. And I think that seems to really be the way a lot are going, and I really, really respect that. I think that's just absolutely magnificent.
I think bottling new make is a clever thing to do. From again, back to the shop point of view, it's a hard sell.
Yeah, no, it's and I think you get the odd punter that comes through, because we'll happily let people try our new makes. Again, we've got that confidence in it.
That's the point. That's you're happy to try a new make, but buy a bottle of it.
Well, and that's I think some people come to go, oh, you should bottle this. This is amazing. Yeah. But at what point in time in your, and that's what I'm saying in terms of the time, who you're with, or what point in your day or night or thought process would you sit down and go, I could go some 60% new make?
That's like, yeah.
That's not going to my thought process. I enjoy trying it as part of a tour, and within that context,
it's part of a tasting or part of an analysis or something.
Yeah. I mean, I did a real good fun tasting with the guys down at Whisky Club, and part of it was I took 3 new make spirits and 3 corresponding mature spirits of those new makes, so you could literally try what it tasted like off the still, and then try it as the new make, and see how the 3 differed off the still, and see how they went off into those directions as well. And that within that context, again, real nice way of doing it. But nobody's going, can I buy a bottle of this new make to take home? No.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking a bit about the blends coming out, and a lot of people are doing blends now. You get a lot of indie bottlers are doing blends as well now. It seems to be the way forward. It's almost like it's a resurrection, and it's a weird thing to say when still 90% of Scotch whisky across the world is blended, that we're almost having a resurgence of blends.
Yeah, the mental thing about it is in terms of that global scale, so much of that volume is through blends, but the blended market in the UK is on its arse. It's a volume price driven market, unfortunately. If you can't hit 14 quid, you're not going to get the volume. When we relaunched Loch Lomond, it was with 1 malt and 2 blends for that very reason, is that we knew some of the markets that we had the immediate opportunities in were blend markets.
Yeah.
And we're in that wonderfully fortunate position of being, I think, the only distillery in Scotland that can produce a distillery named blend. So we bottled them under the Loch Lomond name because the grain and all the malt comes from Loch Lomond.
So you had it out as single blend, didn't you?
Yeah, single blend, as it used to be called, although
I told you weren't allowed to do that.
SWA removed that. Thanks very much, guys. Yeah. I think the common term for it, we would probably need to call it something like single estate blend or something like that. That's but honestly, if you ever get a chance to try our Loch Lomond signature, single blend, but it's finished in 100 cask Solera, using some Oloroso, some refill bourbons and some recharred bourbons, and it is just magnificent. Just get this wonderful malty mouthfeel to it. Quite a high malt content as well. But I mean, if we were to sell it over here, it'd be 25 quid.
Yeah.
And then you're stacked up against some of the supermarket malts that they'll drop down to 18 quid.
I do think, especially with the increases we're seeing in prices for malts, your big groups, your Diageos and whatnot. I think there's a market there for good quality blends to kind of come in and say, we're here, we're quality, we're not as expensive. You look at guys like the Berry Brothers doing their classic range, the Dancing Man, Adelphi. There's a market there that I think people are going to start looking at and say, well, we can't really afford 50 quid in a bottle of whiskey, and it's going to be that is the cheapest whiskey you can get.
Totally agree, and I think the flip side to it is I don't think you'll see masses of new entrants into that because guys like Berry Brothers are just these guys are doing it so well that they've got the history of it, and I think to come in as a new player in the blend market, it's a tough gig for somebody because you've not got that heritage, you've not got that history to.
You see guys like Springbank. I mean, obviously Glen Scotia is in the Campbellton Loch as well. You have that, so that must resurrect confidence in the industry. Like, well, these guys are doing it. Why don't I try? Old Perth have got fantastic range of blended. Okay, it's blended malts, but I can see that being the way of the drinker that are going to start going to these because they're affordable, they're quality, and people are going to say, well, let's give this a bash rather than these kind of, because new guys like Rassy, guys like Lindors, guys like Torraveg, non-aged 4 or 5 year old whiskey, very good as it is, are hitting the market at 50, 60 quid.
Yes, there is the flip side to that, definitely, and I think that, let's say, a name carries a lot in whiskey, and no, not meaning this in a disrespectful way, but if you had sold that as William Grant's and Sons Campbelltown Loch, could you have got more than 17 quid for that bottle? I don't think so. But that's because that William Grant and Sons name is synonymous with blends, and certainly in the UK, in and around that 14, 15 quid mark. Like, if they tried to shift a Campbelltown Loch at 30 quid, I don't think that would sell as well as a Springbank Campbelltown Loch blended Scotch.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm saying. It's that history of your history of the malts and that side of things that I think is really carrying some of them through.
Mm-hmm.
But totally agree. I think there's a lot of people that will poo-poo a blend purely because it is a blend.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of them just associate the word blend with grouse, bells, teachers. That's what blend is. It's not. There's a very good reason that's what we were drinking for literally hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So it's always good fun to tell some of these guys that we've only been drinking single malt as we know it for 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
And
Russell kind of often brings us up in tastings as well, is that most, if not all, these single malts are blended in their own way as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, of Loch Lomond producing 10 malt new make spirits, there's only 2 of them that we bottle as individual pure single malt one spirit.
Yeah.
But because they're all made at Loch Lomond, it's still a single malt.
Yeah.
But we're marrying 3-4 spirits together, and that's what gives them that wonderful rich complexity and depth. It's just because it's made with 100% malted barley, rather than having that base liquid.
I love it when somebody says to me that they would never drink a blend, and I say, "What's your normal dram?" And they'll say a 12-year-old Glenfiddich, and I'll say, "Well, it's a blend." Like, no, it's not. It is actually.
We all know what we get through, Russell, don't we?
And again, I suppose it's about we spoke about the journey at the start, where you kind of get into your whiskey and you start exploring some really expensive and single cask, all this kind of stuff you go into. And for me, I'm kind of coming back down the ABV, and I'm at the stage with Ian. I think it was Ian said at the start of the day where a few drops of water in the whiskey.
Dave Hackerson.
It was Dave, yeah. It's becoming a regular thing to put water in my whiskey now as well, which is something I never did at the beginning. And I'm now looking for a budget blend, a good blend. I mean, I would never start getting Tesco's special or whatever, but looking for the Dancing Man or James Eadie's X, So these are the kind of things that I'm looking for as a go-to drinker that I can afford, that's going to have a lot of flavour, that's going to still challenge my mind enough. So when you're nosing it and you're drinking it, you're still picking up stuff. So there's definitely, as you say, a market for that here, and I would like to think, or I hope to think, in this country.
No, definitely, and I think what we're finding, and we will probably find more so now with everything going on. I'm looking at my whiskey collection differently. I suppose I don't categorize it by age or by region or by anything like that. It is more on that occasion, but I'm more conscious about how and when I'm drinking whiskey. And it's like you said, you'll maybe look and you'll be like, right, I've got a pretty full shelf, but in fact, I've got quite a lot of that kind of special occasion stuff that I'm really reticent to open. Or if I'm opening it, I'm only having one dram. Or I've got quite a lot of that easy drinker single malt, but I could do with that. Oh, I just come home and I just want a drink that I don't need to think about, whether it be long or I don't want it to be £4 a dram kind of idea, where that blend kind of really comes in and ticks that box kind of idea. But it's not thinking about it, it needs to be a blend. You're just thinking about that flavour profile or that occasion, that's what you want, and that's how I'm filling the gaps, like I said, rather than going, I don't really have enough Deanston in my collection anymore kind of way.
Ed Friday's come up there saying most of these bottles are single malts, but the most he's ever paid for a whiskey is for a blend, which surprised him. I'm when it edges up a kind of Huntley direction. I'm wondering if that's the Black Bull blend, one of their special editions. from there.
He certainly mentioned Duncan Taylor. Again, another company.
Yeah, some of Duncan Taylor stuff's really good too.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of chat going on about blends. Ian Bruce as well, who's watching on YouTube, what about the Glasshouse blend, which I think is produced by the guys at Orchid Bar, who do the.
I've not tried that one.
They do
the Porter's gin.
Oh, in Aberdeen.
Aberdeen, they wanted to do.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Is that not Loch Lomond? No,
I've never heard of Glasshouse.
No, don't think so.
I
say I don't think so. I can't rule it out. Do you know what I mean? We do. This is the thing. We do still sell bulk liquid, and we do still do bottlings for other people.
It's a blend anyway that was brought out for cocktails. So the Orchid Bar is a cocktail bar in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
And they wanted to have a whiskey that could be their house whiskey for old fashions, for whiskey sours, for all these kind of stuff. And Ian's saying it's a really nice. He's saying it's produced by Loch Lomond. So.
Super. Well, that explains why it's good then, doesn't it? Obviously, that's.
Oh, indeed, absolutely.
See, I've always known your audiences get a good taste, gents.
We had we had a wee bit of chat going on about the new distilleries. Callum loving Rassay, loving Lindors. Is there any for yourself that has stood out of the new distilleries?
I think Rassay was. I think I'm with Callum and the proper Rassay fanboy. I mean, I've not been there as often as he has. I think he's in danger of getting some sort of restraining order.
He goes up every week. That's right. Eh?
Yeah, but I mean, he clearly kind of keeps the wolf from the door by just buying everything that he can get when he goes over there. That's so they welcome him. Obviously.
Well, the problem is whenever I go up, I can't get anything because he's bought it.
Because Callum's just been out. Callum and Kate have cleaned them out.
Absolutely.
We've got Dean there from Murray McDavid. A good home bar should have whiskies that occupy all corners of the flavour spectrum. Mm-hmm. Single malt grain blend, more unexpected the better. Loch Lomond peated single grain is a belter. Dean's just hanging about. He's been on since the start. He's hanging about to see if you beat his record from last week, which we've got a long way to go yet if we're going to smash that one. But I mean,
so the end of the cycling time trials when the guy comes in with the fast time right at the beginning, he's got to sit in the chair and wait for everybody else to come in. He's sitting there waiting, come on, looking at the clock. That's great to have you on, Dean.
Well, Dean's on the Murray McDavid. One of our tastings we had quite near the start of our kind of shop journey. We did a tasting, and Murray McDavid had an 18-year-old Loch Lomond single grain, single cask, and I used it in a tasting. I was thinking, I don't know how this is going to go down with the customers because they're all malt drinkers. We kind of had it. It was half blind, as in they seen the bottles, but we didn't advertise it was a single grain. Yeah. Try this, and wow, this is 18 years old. And how much is it? I can't remember. It was sub kind of £80 anyway. And we're like, this is amazing.
And that would likely have been like we've got the joys of 2 single grains. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jesus, we've got what? I think we've got 5 different codes with the SWMS. So because we do the grain, which is 90% wheat, 10% malted barley, and then our single grain, as we bottle it, is 100% malted barley through a coffee still.
Yeah. So
I think his 18 would have been the wheat side of things.
Okay.
Rather than the grain, because I think the grain only went in 2002, 2004, so around that. It was early 2000s. Okay. So I don't think there were many casks we were shipped off at that stage.
Yeah, it was a stunning, really, really good whiskey, and as I say, for the price you're paying, was phenomenal. As soon as this group heard single grain, I'm like, oh well, I'm not sure. Don't know if I'm going to buy that. And they're like, guys, come on. It was 96. It was when they had the bright blue kind of tins.
Yes. Yeah, that wasn't the best of quality of spirits, unfortunately, but that's
single grains.
We all have history.
Single grains another thing that people just turn their nose up at. And
yes.
But even after tasting it, even knowing the price, during the conversation, this is amazing. They're really good. Wow, I can't believe we're getting an 18-year-old. As soon as you mention grain, they're like, Oh well, now that you mention it,
I knew there was something I didn't like about it.
Yeah.
nobody wanted to admit
God.
that they liked a single vape.
Yeah.
And it's all just percent. You know, it's like if I'd never mentioned it, probably every one of them would have walked out with a bottle.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Yeah, no, and I think as Dean said, some of the stuff I love doing, and I did it actually down in Dumfries. So we did through the kind of Loch Lomond core range, and then my last dram was an SWMS, and it was their Worlds Collide. So it was our grain finished in a rum cask, and it's just mental flavours. Like what was the one I tried before? Raw stew rum was there other one. That was like a bounty bar and a bottle.
Wow.
Just mad stuff, but and that's great fun stuff that they do that we ordinarily wouldn't, because back then, like I said, we were just shipping that stuff out by the tanker load. It was young stuff that they weren't even thinking about doing mad and wonderful stuff like those guys do. But that's why they're one of the few folk that we're quite happy selling casks to, because we know A, they're only picking the best spirit, and B, that they're going to treat it in the right way, and really do some, not just weird stuff for the sake of doing weird stuff. Like they know about the flavours, and they're really all about doing those two extremes of cask finishing. It's either bringing something really new to it, like that rum finish, or really bringing something that totally accentuates that distillery character and just turns the volume up to 12 on it with the finishing. And that's one of the things I love about them as well.
So I guess you were talking about getting back down to Campbell and stuff like that. Are you getting much more back out on the road again? Are you getting abroad and stuff?
Yeah, no, it's definitely starting to it's definitely starting to come back to life. That's for sure. That the shows are there, and it's certainly now kind of coming into the tail end of the year, which we like to refer to as silly season, with a lot of the kind of big shows kind of coming up and coming hard and fast. But no, it's great to be back. It's great to be back, physically having people in front of you. And as like I said, I have genuinely loved doing Zoom, like the Zoom stuff, keeping things going and having that connection with people from all over the world. Yeah. But to be able to physically share a whiskey with someone from the same bottle that you're just pouring out, and be in the same room with folk, is something that you can't replicate. Virtually, it's a great thing to have back. Definitely, I'm looking forward to.
Have you got a favourite festival that you really look forward to going to?
Honestly, no. I think they all bring different punters, something different. Like Inverness was obviously a new one for the National Whisky Festival guys this year, and that was a great show. Totally different crowd. Down to the Whisky Exchange in London, that big three day behemoth of all the folk that you get, and I think that works really nicely because as London, it brings so many folk from all over, and you get to see so many folk you've not seen for so long. Down to Kendal Whisky Festival started last year. One of the only ones in that kind of north of England, out with the Whisky Lounge side of things. That just again, it brought in a real nice crowd, really engaged crowd, and it was great fun.
Must have been Kendal wasn't a name I thought you were going to hit up there. I mean, Kendal's better known for mint cake and
a very good malt market. Honestly, look, the guys knew their stuff down there.
Yeah,
all run by Phil Walker through the Union Pub in Kendal. He runs that show now. He runs a good ship. It was a cracking wee festival. So we're back for year 2 this year at the start of December.
I spent a night in Kendal a long time ago. Kind of brings a little bit of nightmare actually. I just booked a B&B. Well, it was a B&B, but it was above a pub. Just to break up a journey, from Aberdeen down to London. Years ago driving. It wasn't until I kind of sort of settled into bed and just to wait to nod off to sleep, I realised I was above a nightclub.
Oh, nice.
I think it was about
straight back down into the pub. Right, come on, let's go.
I was sensible.
Russell gets up and goes, "Wait, is that? Are they playing 5? Right, let's get. Oh my god!"
This is long before
He woke up
Gary.
and Rachel was down. He was like, Rachel's gone. He said, "Wait, where are you?" He said, "I'm in the pub." Fuck you, you old bastard.
I'm a good bit older than you guys. This was in the mid to late 80s. So yeah.
I was trying to be nice. I was trying to be nice, Russell. Come on, I mean, take the compliment. But
Mid to late 80s.
Those
I
shapes.
would have been about 6 or 7. I dare say Gary would have been a lot younger than that if he was born.
I wasn't doing any shapes, Dean. I was trying to sleep. I was a wee bit grumpy. I was boring back then. Not anymore.
oh, how times have changed, eh?
Oh, absolutely.
Brilliant. Absolutely.
I've immatured with age. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy. Just that whole date that how long ago. And Russell, this is not a direct.
No, I agree.
How long ago the 70s were? Or how,
I can't believe 1982.
Yeah.
1982 is 40 years. In 1984, we got channel. I started watching Channel 4 in 1984. That's almost 40 years ago. There was only 3 channels on the television.
Yeah.
Russell, the one I had the other week was I had to explain to my 11-year-old son. And his question, it's very valid, very very valid. Daddy, why do we call it a mobile phone? Oh, Jesus.
handy phone in Germany.
No, honestly, mad, absolutely mad.
Greg's got to go. He's obviously got work to do. So I don't know if you know. Do you know Greg Schwartz from?
I don't actually know.
So have you seen the Water of Life film? It kind of came on the go.
I mean, I
Lie. Yes, you have.
Yeah, yes.
I've seen it 10 times.
Just is there going to be a pop quiz about the film or anything? No. Oh, then yeah. Look, seen it. Love it.
But this is a really good film released about about Burns Night last year. Guys over in LA and obviously spent a lot of time in Ireland, around Scotland, just doing a fantastic historical film about whiskey and Scotch and all that kind of stuff, called The Water of Life, and really worth a watch. So they're in the process of doing another film based on independent bottling.
Oh, wonderful!
Which I think will be pretty fascinating. So yeah, Greg's saying he really wants to come and visit Loch Lomond. So loads of the whiskey but haven't been to the distillery. So I'm sure you'll meet Greg at some point.
Yeah, Greg, just hit me up on Garamel's 01 down here. We'll see what we can do for you, sir.
He does a wee thing similar to ours called Big Man Wee Dram because he's a very, very, very big guy, Greg. So Big Man Wee Dram is his like chat that he does every now and again.
I like that.
Yes, absolutely.
Super.
Just jumping back there onto. I mean, I couldn't believe we got some kind of 20-year-old whiskies in. I think it was Berry Brothers who released, and I was like, I can't be 20 years old. It's distilled in 2001. I'm like,
yeah. And then it's like you said, what the 1990s? The 1990s was only 10 years ago. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it's scary now. I suppose it's going with the times. It doesn't seem old at all. It's like that. Why they charge you that much for a bottle distilled in 2001? Oh shit! Because it's 21 years old. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's like the memes. It's like the memes you see when it's more folk in America when they're getting ID'd for booze, and then they just get to there with their ID and they go, oh no, it's okay. I saw the one at the start of your date of birth. You're okay. Come on, come on.
I used to be in the NHS, guy. I think I probably told you before, but in mental health nurse, you get referrals, and obviously we would only see people that were between 18 and 65, and you would get a referral, and it would be in the 2000s, and you'd be thinking, no, they should. Why are they not going to young people? Why are they not going to the young people's department? Oh, wait a minute, they're 19. All right, okay.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, gents, I'm unfortunately going to have to shoot off.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thank you very much.
I need to go wrangle 3 youngsters into bed.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I say that. I think my wife's probably done most of the legwork already.
Callum says how old you are. It's making them feel very, very old. Well,
hey, Gary, thank you very much for coming on. It's been far too long in terms of getting the chat.
Not at all, gentlemen.
such a long time ago since we had the Loch Lomond tasting
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
the shop as well. So we'll need to get you back for both actually at some point.
Definitely. Well, and listen,
Yeah,
let's
get
get
you
you
to the shop.
guys down to Campbelltown.
Yeah. Can you just hold on 2 seconds before you go and help Mrs. Mills with the children, just when we go off. But before we head off, guys, just to say next week, for all you watching again tonight, thank you very much. Great to see you on, Dean, Paul, Ian, Callum, Dave, Greg, everybody. Just fantastic to see you on board. Matthew, thanks for joining us again. We don't have a chat next week because we have our Highland Whisky Academy week next week. So next Thursday, I think we'll be doing some kind of entertaining in the evening, perhaps. And Mike and I
will be dancing to some disco moves.
I'll be doing the disco moves from the 80s. Yeah, I'll get my
Can you
shiny.
do disco moves to the Beatles? Is that a thing?
Brilliant. So the next Blether will be on the 15th. So 2 weeks today, 15th of September, and we will have. At long last, after a lot of chasing, we will have Rachel Barry. So Rachel's going to join us in 2 weeks' time. So please join us for that one, guys. And just take a week off next week while we're busy working. But in the meantime, thanks again, Gary, and slàinte to everybody.
Slàinte to guys. Have a great weekend. Hopefully we'll see you soon, physically in the shop, or if not, online. So, yeah, thanks again, Gary. And guys at home.
Makes sense. Thanks, everyone.
At home afterwards, because this is recorded, this goes out. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat.
Yep,
and we'll do our best to get them sent off to Gary, and Gary can hopefully catch up on that later on.
Or if you want to reach out to me down here, I'm Gary Mills 01 on most things.
Yeah.
02 on Instagram. 01 on Instagram.
007 once he's done his training.
Have you said verbal abuse to Gary Mills 01 on Instagram?
Yes. Oh yeah, like constantly. I mean, he's blocked me now, obviously.
So, guys, if you want to follow Gary Mills 01 on Instagram, that is for
abuse. Yeah. Ask him loads of questions. He hates that.
If you do that, please do not mention him through the Whisky Shop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Hashtag sent by Inverurie.
Right, cheers, guys. Thanks, Gary. Thanks again. Absolutely brilliant weather. It's been really good fun.
All right.
Bye now.
Cheers, guys.